The wind howled across the Wyoming plains like a living thing, clawing at the wooden walls of the small ranch house as if trying to tear it apart. Snow pressed against the windows in thick white sheets, blinding the night beyond. Inside, a single oil lamp flickered weakly, casting long, trembling shadows across the bare room. Anna Whittaker sat at the small table with her hands folded in her lap. She had not eaten since morning. Her stomach cramped painfully, but she ignored it. Hunger was not new to her. What hurt more was the silence, heavy, unfamiliar, and sharp with regret. This was supposed to be her new life, her new beginning. Instead, it felt like exile. Across the room, Thomas Hale, her husband of exactly 3 hours, removed his gloves and coat, shaking snow onto the floor. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his face weathered by years of sun and hardship. He moved with the quiet confidence of a man who had learned to rely only on himself. They were strangers, bound together by letters, promises, and desperation. Thomas glanced toward the stove, where a single plate of food rested, beans, bread, and a piece of salt pork. One plate, one portion, habit, born of years alone, had guided his hand without thought. Anna noticed it immediately. Her throat tightened. She lowered her eyes, ashamed of the hope that flickered inside her chest before being smothered by reality. Of course there was only one plate. Of course there was not enough. She was the intruder here, the burden. It was Christmas Eve, and she had no supper. A bride bought by letters. Anna had crossed half a continent for this marriage. Orphaned young, raised in crowded boarding houses and sewing rooms. She had learned early that survival depended on endurance, not dreams. When the advertisement appeared in the back of a newspaper, hardworking rancher seeks respectable wife, honest living, modest home, it felt less like romance and more like rescue. The letters between them had been polite. Careful, Thomas wrote about the ranch, the cattle, the long winters. Anna wrote about her sewing, her quiet nature, her willingness to work. Neither spoke of loneliness, neither spoke of fear. When she stepped off the train earlier that day, snow whipping around her thin coat, Thomas had been waiting. He nodded once, offered his hand, and said simply, "You must be Anna." That was all, no smile. No warmth. She told herself that men of the frontier were not sentimental. That kindness came later, after trust, but now, sitting hungry at his table, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. A house colder than winter. Thomas sat down heavily and picked up his fork. He hesitated. For the first time since she arrived, he really looked at her, at the way her shoulders curved inward, at her hands, red and cracked from cold. At the thinness of her face. She was smaller than he had imagined, quieter, fragile in a way that unsettled him. You eat," Anna said softly, her voice barely louder than the wind outside. "I'm not very hungry." It was a lie. Thomas knew it was a lie. He felt something twist inside his chest, something uncomfortable and sharp. Guilt, maybe, or shame. He had lived alone for so long that he had forgotten what it meant to share space, to consider another person. Slowly, he set his fork down. He stood, walked to the cupboard, opened it, and frowned, empty, just as he expected, except he turned back to the table. Without a word, Thomas picked up the plate, walked across the room, and set it gently in front of Anna. She stared at it, stunned. "Aren't you?" She began. "I can manage," he said gruffly. "You need it more." Her eyes filled instantly with tears. She had promised herself she would not cry. Not here. Not in front of this man who barely knew her. But hunger, exhaustion, and kindness, unexpected kindness, broke something open inside her. Thomas pulled another chair close, broke the bread in half, and sat beside her. "We'll share," he said simply. The first crack in the wall. They ate in silence, but it was no longer empty. Each bite warmed Anna more than the food itself ever could. The simple act of sharing felt monumental, like the first stone laid in the foundation of something fragile but real. Thomas ate slowly, watching her from the corner of his eye. He noticed how she tried to take smaller portions, how she paused before every bite as if asking permission. "You don't have to be afraid here," he said suddenly. Anna looked up. "I'm not afraid," she said, but her voice trembled. He nodded, not pressing further. Outside, the wind softened. Snow continued to fall, but quieter now, gentler, as if the storm itself were listening. Christmas morning brings truth. Anna woke before dawn, instinctively, as she always had. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then the memories returned. The train, the vows, the plate of food shared in silence. She rose quietly and dressed. Thomas awoke later to the smell of something warm. Bread, fresh bread. He stepped into the kitchen and froze. Anna stood at the stove, cheeks flushed, flour on her sleeves. She turned, startled. "I hope you don't mind," she said quickly. "I found some flour tucked away, I thought, since it's Christmas." The words caught in her throat. Thomas swallowed hard. "No one has made bread in this house," he said slowly, "since my mother died." Anna didn't know what to say. "Thank you," he added, his voice rough. They ate together again, this time with smiles, tentative but real. A marriage begins to breathe. Days passed, then weeks. Winter was unforgiving, but inside the house, something softened. Anna cleaned, cooked, mended. Thomas worked the land, chopped wood, repaired fences. In the evenings they talked, carefully at first, then more freely. He told her about his parents, about inheriting the ranch too young, about learning to survive by shutting out need. She told him about hunger, about factories, about dreaming of safety more than love. One night, as snow fell again, Thomas handed her a small box. Inside was a simple silver locket. "I didn't know what else to give," he said awkwardly. "But I'm glad you came." Anna closed her fingers around it, tears shining in her eyes. "So am I," she whispered. The promise kept by spring, the land thawed. So did Thomas. The ranch was no longer silent. Laughter lived there now, music, warm meals, shared glances that lingered, and every Christmas Eve after that, no matter how little they had, Thomas and Anna shared one plate, side by side, remembering the night that changed everything. The night when hunger met kindness, the night when a marriage stopped being an arrangement and became a home.